"Human, your touch drives me crazy." The alien girl can't resist any longer. Humanity entered the galactic cooperative quietly. There was no grand speech, no warning sirens, no declaration of power. The humans arrived with trade ships, translators, and open hands. Compared to the ancient alien civilizations, they looked small, soft, and unremarkable. Most species agreed on one thing quickly: humans were not dangerous. They were classified as Category Delta, physically weak, emotionally unstable, and biologically average. That judgment would soon be proven wrong. On the neutral space station Helix 9, dozens of species gathered for a routine cultural exchange. Scientists, diplomats, and observers moved through white halls filled with floating symbols and soft artificial light. Among the human delegation was Elias Ward, a systems engineer chosen not for politics, but because he knew how to fix anything that broke. He wore a simple uniform, no weapons, no rank symbols. He was nervous but calm, reminding himself that this was just another job, just in space. Across the room stood Saraith. She was not humanoid in the human sense, but close enough to make conversation easy. Tall, slender, with skin that shifted softly in color like calm water under light. Her eyes were large, glowing faintly, always observing. Saraith was a senior xenobiologist from the Velori Collective, a species known for extreme intelligence and advanced technology. Her kind experienced reality differently than humans. Their nervous systems were incredibly sensitive, allowing them to process massive amounts of data instantly. It was also their greatest weakness. Saraith had studied hundreds of species. Humans were meant to be boring. That assumption ended with one mistake. As Elias examined a malfunctioning interface panel near her research station, the lights flickered. A small power surge ran through the floor. Elias stepped back suddenly, losing balance for a moment. Instinctively, he reached out. His bare hand touched Saraith's forearm. The reaction was immediate. Saraith froze. Her skin flared bright silver, then deep violet. Her breath caught sharply, and her legs nearly gave out. Data tablets dropped from her hands and shattered against the floor. The room went silent. Elias pulled his hand back at once. I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean, are you okay?" Saraith could not answer. Inside her mind, everything had changed. Her species lived with constant sensory overload. Thoughts, emotions, and external signals layered endlessly. They trained their entire lives to maintain control. Meditation, neural dampeners, discipline. It was never truly quiet. But the moment the human touched her, the noise stopped. Not faded, not softened, stopped. Her thoughts aligned. Her breathing slowed. Her mind felt clear in a way she had never experienced before. It was overwhelming, not painful, but intense, like standing in perfect silence after a lifetime of storms. Security drones activated instantly. Several alien delegates backed away, their translators buzzing with alarm. Human contact detected. Neural scans spiked wildly, then stabilized in perfect harmony. The readings made no sense. Saraith finally spoke, her voice unsteady. "Do not remove him." The room froze again. "He must remain," she said more clearly. "Please." The council observers exchanged confused signals. No species had ever reacted like this to simple contact. Against protocol, Elias was escorted, not to a holding cell, but to a controlled research chamber. Saraith insisted on overseeing the process herself. She sat across from him behind a transparent barrier, her expression focused but troubled. "Human Elias Ward," she said, "I require your cooperation." Elias swallowed. "I didn't hurt you, did I?" "No," Saraith replied. "You did something far worse." He stiffened. "Worse." "You altered my neural state without effort," she said calmly. "That should not be possible." Tests began. Heart rate monitors, emotional readings, brainwave comparisons. Elias simply sat still, answering questions, feeling more confused by the minute. Finally, Saraith requested a second test. "Remove the barrier," she said. The medical team protested immediately. "That is unsafe." "I accept full responsibility," Saraith answered. Slowly the barrier slid down. Elias hesitated. "Do you want me to?" "Yes," she said quietly. "Touch my arm again." He did, carefully, gently, only his fingertips. The effect was even stronger. Saraith's posture straightened. Her breathing deepened. Her skin shifted into a calm, steady blue. The neural monitors displayed patterns that the medical team had never recorded before, perfect synchronization. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, steadying herself. "This sensation," she said, voice low but controlled, "is not desire. It is not emotion as humans define it." "Then what is it?" Elias asked. "Relief," she replied. The room fell into stunned silence. Further tests revealed the impossible truth. Human skin emitted weak but stable bioelectrical signals combined with subconscious emotional feedback. Individually, these signals were meaningless. Together, they acted like a natural stabilizer. To Saraith's species, and potentially many others, human presence alone reduced neural stress. Humans were not powerful, they were grounding. The Council issued an immediate temporary restriction. All humans were ordered to avoid physical contact with non-humans until further notice. Elias was escorted back to his quarters, his hands covered with light isolation gloves. He felt embarrassed, worried he had caused harm. Saraith watched him leave from behind the glass. For the first time in her long life, she felt the noise returning. And for the first time, she understood fear, not of humans, but of what life would feel like without them. As Helix 9 rotated silently through space, the galaxy had no idea that its understanding of humanity had just begun to collapse. And this was only the beginning. The Galactic Cooperative did not sleep after the incident on Helix 9. News traveled fast, even with restricted data locks. Whispers spread through council chambers, research stations, and military networks. A single human touch had altered the neural state of a Velori elite scientist, without tools, without training, without intention. To many species, that was terrifying. To the humans, it was confusing. Elias Ward sat alone in his assigned quarters, staring at his gloved hands. The gloves were thin, transparent, and uncomfortable. He had been ordered to wear them at all times outside his room. He did not feel powerful. He felt like a problem. Across the station, Saraith argued with the council. "This is not an act of dominance," she said firmly. "Humans did not evolve to control us. They evolved differently." A tall, armored counselor from the Threx Dominion responded sharply. "Intent does not matter. Effect does. Your reaction proves humans are a biological threat." "A threat," Saraith replied, "or a solution we never knew we needed." The council chamber filled with overlapping voices. Fear always spoke louder than reason. Emergency protocols were passed within hours. Humans were reclassified from Category Delta to Conditional Hazard Species. Physical contact with non-humans was banned. Human movement on shared stations was limited. Armed escorts were assigned, not to protect humans but to contain them. When the order reached the human delegation, shock turned into quiet anger. "We didn't do anything wrong," one diplomat said. "They're afraid," another replied. "That's worse." Elias was summoned again, not as a witness but as a subject. This time, the research lab was filled with guards. Saraith stood behind a console, her expression controlled but strained. She had not experienced human contact since the incident. The effects were clear in her posture, stiffer movements, flickers of discomfort, constant mental strain. "You should not be here," Elias said softly when he saw her. "I requested this," she answered, "for both our species." The tests resumed, stricter than before. Humans were placed behind energy barriers. Emotional states were measured. Presence alone caused mild effects. Proximity strengthened them. Touch amplified them dramatically. But the most disturbing discovery came when they expanded the tests. Other species reacted too. A Krell strategist showed reduced aggression. A Nari diplomat experienced improved memory clarity. A Threx soldier, known for uncontrollable battle instincts, became calm and focused within minutes of human presence. The room filled with uneasy silence. Humans were not influencing thoughts, they were stabilizing minds. This should not exist, one council scientist whispered. No species should have this effect naturally. Saraith turned toward them. And yet it does. The council's fear deepened. If humans could calm warriors, negotiate impossible treaties, or stabilize command units in battle, then power across the galaxy would shift. Not through weapons, but through proximity. That kind of power could not be controlled easily. So the council chose control. A new order was issued. All human researchers were to be relocated to isolated sectors. Saraith protested immediately. "You are cutting off essential study." "We are preventing dependency," the council answered. The truth was simpler. They were afraid of becoming weak without humans. When Elias was escorted away from the lab, Saraith felt it immediately. Her thoughts scattered. The noise returned stronger than before, as if her mind now knew what peace felt like, and could no longer tolerate its absence. She clenched her hands tightly, steadying herself. This was not desire, it was biology. Days passed. The station grew tense. Alien crews began making small, quiet requests. Could a human technician assist? Would a human observer be allowed? Just for a short time. Each request was denied. Then the incident happened. A deep space patrol vessel arrived at Helix 9 in distress. Its crew belonged to a species with naturally unstable neural systems. Under stress, they lost coordination and judgment. They were already losing control. Medical teams tried everything: sedatives, neural dampeners, emergency stasis. Nothing worked. The ship's captain collapsed mid-command, overwhelmed by cascading sensory feedback. The vessel drifted toward the station, engines unstable. Collision warnings blared. Panic spread. A Threx security commander slammed a claw against the command console. "They are spiraling. We cannot board them safely." Saraith stepped forward. "There is one option you are ignoring," she said. All eyes turned toward her. "A human presence," she continued. "Even at a distance." The council hesitated. "Unacceptable risk," one member said. "Then accept the collision," Saraith replied coldly. Silence followed. Finally, reluctantly, permission was granted. Elias was brought to the observation deck under heavy guard. He could hear the alarms, feel the tension in the air. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do," he said honestly. "Do nothing," Saraith replied. "Just be there." The moment Elias entered the ship's communication range, the effect was visible. The distressed crew's neural readings began to stabilize. Breathing slowed, speech patterns normalized, coordination returned. The ship regained control. No touch, no words, just presence. The station went quiet. The council had its proof. Humans were not a danger. They were a necessity. That realization frightened them more than any weapon ever could. After the crisis, restrictions were not lifted. They were tightened. Humans were no longer just contained, they were watched. And among the alien species, a new fear spread quietly. What if humanity ever decided to leave? Saraith stood alone in the observation chamber, staring at the stars beyond Helix 9. For the first time, her people's greatest strength, intellect, felt fragile, because it relied on balance. And humans, without knowing it, had become the balance point of the galaxy. Elias, escorted back to isolation, looked once more at the station corridors filled with guards. He did not feel like a hero, but the galaxy was beginning to realize something important. Humanity did not conquer. Humanity anchored, and the universe had never been prepared for that. The galaxy began to feel wrong. At first, no one could explain it clearly. Systems still worked, fleets still moved, councils still met. But something invisible had shifted, like gravity changing direction. Human isolation was working too well. On Helix 9 and other shared stations, the absence of humans created subtle but dangerous effects. Negotiations took longer, tempers rose faster, strategic errors increased. Medical cases involving neural fatigue tripled within days. The council blamed coincidence. Saraith knew better. She stood in her private research chamber, hands shaking slightly as she reviewed data streams. Without human proximity, her mind felt like it was being torn in too many directions at once. Focus took effort. Calm required pain. She had lived like this her entire life. Now she understood how broken it truly was. Across the station, Elia's ward was confined to a human-only habitat ring. He watched news feeds in silence, seeing alien officials argue, threaten, and accuse each other. "They look tired," he said quietly to another engineer. "They always look tired," the engineer replied. "We just didn't notice." The truth became impossible to hide when the first disaster happened. A border defense fleet from the Threx Dominion miscalculated a jump corridor. Their commanders, overwhelmed by combat stress and sensory overload, failed to correct the error in time. Two cruisers collided. Hundreds died. For the first time in centuries, a major galactic power suffered a peacetime loss caused not by enemy action, but by mental instability. The council emergency session was loud, chaotic, and angry. "This is unacceptable." "Balance," whispers followed. Medical teams secretly requested human volunteers. Captains asked for human advisors in coded language. Even hardened warriors noticed something strange. When humans were nearby, battles felt quieter inside their heads. The council responded with force. Human movement was further restricted. Unauthorized contact became a criminal offense. Armed patrols guarded human sectors. Fear had turned into control. Elias felt it clearly when security drones followed him everywhere. He was no longer treated like a guest. He was treated like a resource, or worse, a threat. Saraith finally broke protocol. She requested a private meeting with Elias. The council denied it, so she ignored them. Using her authority as a senior scientist, she rerouted Elias to a medical review chamber. The guards hesitated, then obeyed. Rules meant less when minds were already strained. When Elias entered the room, Saraith was waiting. She looked exhausted. "You should not have done this," Elias said. "I know," she replied, "but the galaxy is unraveling." She removed her neural dampener, a device her species wore to suppress overload. Her breathing became uneven instantly. "Please," she said quietly, "just sit near me." He did. Not touching, just close. Within minutes her breathing steadied, her eyes focused, the strain eased. Saraith let out a long breath she felt like she had been holding her entire life. "This is what we are afraid of," she said. "Not you, dependence." Elias frowned. "We never asked for this. And that," she replied, "is why you are dangerous to power." Before more could be said, alarms blared across the station. A hostile force had arrived. They called themselves the Car Ascendancy, a species immune to most known psychological warfare. They attacked not with brute force but with mind-disrupting technology, weapons that amplified stress, fear, and confusion. For most species, it was devastating. Command crews froze, pilots lost focus, defense grids faltered. The car attacked Helix 9 directly. Panic erupted. Council members shouted orders that contradicted each other. Fleet commanders struggled to maintain coherence. The car advanced easily, their enemies tearing themselves apart from inside. Saraith understood immediately. "This is it," she said. "This is what happens when the noise wins." She turned to Elias. "The council will never allow it," she continued. "But if we do nothing, we lose everything." Elias looked at the chaos on the screens. "What do you need me to do?" Saraith hesitated. "Stand with us," she said. Openly, they moved quickly. Saraith broadcast an unauthorized message across Helix 9 and nearby fleets. "All units," her voice rang out, strained but clear. Human presence has a stabilizing effect on neural systems. If you can hear this, bring humans to your command centers. Not as weapons, as anchors. The Council tried to cut the transmission. Too late. Alien captains, desperate and dying, acted without permission. Human technicians, diplomats, engineers, ordinary people were rushed onto bridges, med bays, and control rooms. The effect was immediate. Confusion eased, panic faded, coordination returned. The car weapons lost effectiveness as minds stabilized faster than the attacks could disrupt them. On Helix 9's defense platform, Elias stood behind a tactical officer. He said nothing, did nothing. The officer's hand stopped shaking. Orders became clear. Weapons fired true. For the first time, the car faltered. "They're resisting," a car commander hissed. Impossible. It was. Humans weren't stronger. They were steadier. As human presence spread, the battlefield changed. Fleets held formation. Pilots trusted instincts again. Medics saved lives under pressure. The car retreat was sudden and disorganized. Victory followed. Silence returned to the stars. After the battle, the council chambers were quiet in a different way. Not fear, shame. They had seen the truth with their own senses. Humans were not controlling them. Humans were preventing collapse. Saraith stood before the council one last time, Elias beside her. "You feared weakness," she said, "but what you feared was honesty. We were never as stable as we believed." She gestured toward Elias. "They are not our masters, they are our mirrors." No one argued. Because for the first time in galactic history, power had not come from fear or force. It had come from calm. And the galaxy could no longer deny what humanity truly was. Not conquerors, not rulers, but the quiet strength holding everything together. The galaxy did not celebrate the victory right away. There were no loud cheers or grand parades. Too many worlds were still shaking from what they had learned. The car ascendancy had retreated, but something far more important had been exposed. The galaxy had been unstable for a very long time. Humans had not fixed it with weapons. They had simply stood there and refused to fall apart. In the days after the battle, Helix 9 became the center of everything. Emergency councils turned into permanent sessions. Species that once ignored humans now waited patiently for their words. Elias Ward did not feel like a hero. He sat in a quiet observation room, watching stars move slowly past the window. His gloves were gone. No one had ordered him to wear them again. For the first time since arriving on the station, he felt normal. Saraith entered the room without announcement. Her steps were lighter now, her posture steady. She no longer wore her neural dampener. "You should be resting," Elias said. "I am," she replied, sitting across from him. For the first time. The silence between them was comfortable. Across the station, medical teams reported impossible recoveries. Patients suffering from long-term neural damage stabilized in human-led wards. Command crews requested human liaisons, not as leaders but as support. The phrase spread quickly. Human anchor units. The council hated the name. They could not stop it. During the final emergency assembly, every major species attended. Even those who once demanded human isolation now stood quietly, listening. The High Counselor spoke slowly, carefully. "We misjudged humanity," they said. Not because they were stronger than expected, but because we misunderstood strength itself. A massive data display appeared, showing comparisons between pre-human and post-human involvement across fleets, hospitals, and negotiations. Errors reduced. Casualties dropped. Conflicts resolved faster. Stability increased everywhere humans were present. Saraith was invited to speak. She stood in the center of the chamber, her voice clear and calm. "My people believed constant control was the same as balance," she said. "We were wrong. Balance does not come from force, it comes from connection." She turned slightly toward the human delegation. "Humans do not overwhelm us, they allow us to rest." The chamber was silent. Then a Threx war commander, once one of humanity's strongest critics, stepped forward. "In battle," he said bluntly, "human engineers stood behind my soldiers. They did not fight, they did not command, but my warriors held the line longer than ever before." He lowered his head slightly. "That matters." One by one, other representatives spoke. Not in praise, but in honesty. Humans had changed how the galaxy functioned, and they had done it without asking permission. The final ruling took hours. When it came, it reshaped history. Humans were no longer classified by threat level or power. They were designated a keystone species, a species whose presence increased stability across systems, cultures, and conflicts. Human isolation orders were permanently removed. New protocols were established, not to control humans but to protect them. For the first time, the galaxy acknowledged a simple truth: if humans chose to leave, everything would suffer. Elias learned about the decision from Saraith. "They've given us a choice," he said quietly. "We could walk away." "Yes," she replied, "and they are afraid you might." Elias looked back at the stars. Humans had always adapted, survived, endured. They had never planned to hold the universe together, but now the universe was asking. The human leadership met in private. The discussion was long, emotional, and divided. Some argued for independence. Others feared exploitation. In the end, the decision was simple. Humans would stay, not as rulers, not as tools, but as partners. Human Anchor Corps were formed, volunteers trained not for combat but for resilience. Engineers, medics, teachers, artists. Ordinary people with steady minds and quiet courage. They were placed across the galaxy, not everywhere, just where they were needed. Elias refused promotion. Instead, he returned to Helix 9 as a systems engineer. Saraith continued her research, now openly, no longer hiding results. They worked together often, not touching every time, not depending but understanding. One day, as they walked through a station garden filled with artificial sunlight, Saraith paused. "My people once said," she began, "Human, your touch drives me crazy." Elias smiled awkwardly. "Yeah, I heard." She looked at him, eyes calm. "They were wrong," she said. "It was never madness." He waited. "It was silence," she finished. Years passed. The galaxy did not become perfect. There were still wars, still arguments, still fear. But now, when chaos rose too high, humans were invited, not to dominate but to steady the ground. Children of many species grew up knowing humans not as legends but as neighbors. The idea of power changed. Not loud, not cruel, but present. And somewhere deep in space, long after the Car ascendancy faded into history, a simple truth remained. When the universe began to shake, humanity did not push back. They stood still. And the universe learned to steady itself around them. End.